So good morning, everybody. How's the sound, Ava? Okay. It's loud enough?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Thank you, Ava, for moderating this morning. Ava also moderated for Sharon yesterday for the day long. I don't know how many of you were able to be there for that wonderful day, and so thank you. Uh, Thank you, Ava. So again, I'm Trudy, and this is our Sunday morning sitting group at InsightLA. Let's just wait a couple of minutes as people are arriving. It was so funny yesterday because the day long began at 10, and at 10, everybody was there. And I said, oh, let's take a couple minutes to let people arrive. But nobody was arriving because everybody was already there. And not to contrast it with the sitting group, which is a little more casual. Yeah, would just take a couple minutes for people to arrive if they do. Hopefully they will, and then we begin. And in the meantime, if you'd like to say where you're tuning in from today, very curious always to know where you are. Um, we're beginning to contemplate. We were beginning anyway to contemplate uh, in-person meetings, and I just said no, not for my Sunday sitting group, not unless we can do the hybrid technology of people being able to sign in from other places, because so many of you are from other places. So yeah, I'm curious to know what other places um, you're coming from. You can put that in the chat while we give people another minute or so to arrive. Yeah, see, Ava's in the high desert. She's not going to drive in for Sunday morning sitting group.
I used to do that though, Trudy.
Wow, that is dedication, Ava. Yeah, Ritz probably isn't going to come from Minnesota, and Adam isn't going to pop in from Maui, and Juliana from Rhode Island. See, that's the thing. We have to really have the hybrid technology if we're going to meet in person again. And Stephanie from the UK. Yeah, Effie. Yeah, this is the dilemma. And Candace, who's, a regular coming from Santa Rosa, we really would have to be able to arrange for people to be present on Zoom as well. Yeah, it would be wonderful to see each other in person. Okay, so again, welcome to our Insight LA Sunday Sitting Group. My name is Trudy. I'm the founder of Insight LA 20 years ago, and really happy to welcome you all to our morning, well, afternoon, evening, depending on where you are, this time of our practicing together. Last weekend was Mother's Day, and Dina Esh taught about Ramadan and Eid and showed pictures of her family, her mother, I hope, anyway, her family in Egypt. And so, an interesting way for us to begin to learn, those of us who aren't aware, to begin to learn some about different spiritual traditions and how the practitioners in our teacher group and in our community who are from different cultures, how they are linking the teachings of their spiritual culture, whatever that might be, with the teachings that they're presently studying and sharing, the teachings of mindfulness and Buddhist psychology and meditation. And this morning, we've been looking at the five faculties, the five indriyas, and how when we begin to recognize these faculties in our own minds, which are, to remind you, um, confidence, trust in yourself and the practice, we call it faith, um, determination, energy, uh, mindfulness, concentration, the gathering of our fragmented consciousness to being fully present, and the wisdom that arises from that, as well as the wisdom to discern, what's useful, what's not, what's skillful, what's not, and so forth. So those are the five faculties that we all have in our minds. We all have the capacity, and even if you're really, I don't know, the least confident, most shy person, you have a little confidence, or you wouldn't even be here. So everybody has some faith, if not in how it is right now, the faith that it's possible to transform. And everybody has not, excuse me, not only some faith, but some level of effort to get here and the determination to be here. And the mindfulness to pay attention to what's happening here, and the concentration that begins to develop from our formal practice of sitting together, which we will begin in just a couple minutes. And the discernment to know what's of benefit in our lives and what isn't, and the courage, I would add, the wisdom and courage to begin to let go of that which is no longer benefiting us in our lives. And when we take these innate qualities and direct them toward the Dharma, toward learning to understand and have deeper insight into who we are and what we're about and what we're up to, and how to begin to align ourselves with changing that, then they become the five, powers. And they begin to really, we don't have to even do anything, they just begin to work us and work in us. And so for those of you who are, and so today I want to talk about a little bit sort of then what in the practice. And for those of you who may be new to this group, we spend about we do some meditation, which we're going to do right now for about a half hour. Then we have some teaching, and then we have a chance for some sharing. I don't call it Q&A because I'm not providing answers. I'm just responding to people. So Q&R, your reflections, my responses. And so let's sit together. So beginning to, just find the way that your body can be relaxed and at ease. And that might be sitting up straight. It might be sitting in a chair. It might be lying down, having support. Might be standing up, whatever way really suits you. And then also, it's really optional for you to keep your camera on or off. I like, obviously, to see you, but it's not required that you keep your camera on. But everybody is muted, and afterwards you can be unmuted for our sharing part. Oh, and I forgot to say that if you're new, we have breakout groups where you can get to know people and have some conversation around your practice. 10 minutes after the ending of the group with me, there's a bio break, and then there are breakout groups for people for, 20 minutes to a half hour. It's really a nice thing to do. So for now, just as much as you can, relaxing back into your posture, whatever it may be, whatever frame you've chosen for being quiet together in this body, in this moment. Begin with a deep breath in and out. Breathing in the energizing breath, And breathing out, the letting go, releasing, relaxing breath. And once again, and just noticing where your attention is placed. And gently bring your attention to just the head. May my head relax and be happy. To your neck, may my neck relax and be happy. To the shoulders, may my shoulders lower and relax as much as possible. My arms and hands be at ease. May my back, upper back, middle back, lower back be happy and strong. May my chest and belly relax and be at ease. May my bottom, my hips, my legs, knees, thighs, ankles relax and be happy. May my feet relax and be at ease. In this way, may my attention, my mind sense and feel the whole body sitting here. And then bringing attention to the movement of the breath in the body. And if the breath is not a soothing subject of meditation for you, just notice the sounds of life around you. And the shifting, changing sensations in the body. And just resting, dropping into what's happening right now. With the kind of awareness of mindfulness, the kind of awareness that is, yes, kind awareness of whatever's happening in the most comfortable and relaxed way possible. This is how it is right now. That's all. And always when the mind wanders into the past or the future, realms of the imagination, you can gently move your body back, just shifting back an inch or half an inch if you're sitting or standing. And just relaxing back if you're lying down. Just embodying the sense of receiving instead of leaning toward looking for the next moment. Stepping back and simply receiving this breath. This thought or feeling, this sound. This moment. Noticing what is not here, whatever you may be imagining elsewhere, everything that came before this moment, everything that may follow, not actually here. And noticing what's here. All that's here is me, you, just being here. Very simple. Whatever disturbances, whatever turmoil may be happening in your life, it's not here right now. What's here right now is presence, awareness, goodwill, and appreciation of this moment, and of being here to experience it fully, whatever it may be. Just this and this. Yes, thank you everybody for this sitting together. Just really, I really needed that today. Um, so I'm speaking to you from the unceded lands of the Coast Miwok tribes in Marin County, what is now Marin County, north of San Francisco, uh, at Jack's house, and welcoming everybody, regardless of who you are or how you identify in this life. You are completely welcome here. And I want to just name the terror, the horror of the racialized killing in Buffalo, New York, and the fact that while we may not be in Ukraine or Darfur or Ethiopia or Somalia or Burma or Myanmar, any of the places that where people are either at war or displaced within their own countries, we may not be fleeing for our lives, but especially as a Black or brown person in this country, to feel fear about going to a club, to a supermarket, to church, to a concert, to, I mean, just the ordinary things that that we all do in our lives. It just shows how much and how deeply entrenched the ignorance is in some folks, and the whole practice. When the Buddha talks about liberation, when the Buddha talks about an end of suffering, when mindfulness, we talk about the liberation, we're talking about what are we being liberated from? What are we being freed from? And it's from the kind of greed and craving that gets us into trouble and ultimately leads to the destruction of the environment, or the hate that leads to these hate crimes, and the dismantling of the civil rights structures that are put in place for, and delusion, the delusion that behaving in ways that trample on the rights of others is okay. All of this, the Buddha was very, very clear. And I always want to remember this when something like this happens, these horrific things that happen more often, because I think the statistic is that just in terms of numbers of people and numbers of guns, that that everybody in this country has a gun. Of course, we don't all have a gun, but some of us have, people who collect them have more than one. So anyway, it just somehow averages out. So if everybody has a weapon or access to a weapon, the people who are in the grip of hate or delusion, or just mentally so unbalanced, yeah, it's very dangerous. But the Buddha was very clear. The Buddha said, all tremble at violence. Life is dear to all. Putting oneself in the place of another, one should not kill or cause another to kill. And of course, we can understand this at all levels, not obviously killing humans and killing each other. But when you begin to refine your awareness, you really don't want to kill anything. When I was in the retreat at Ram Dass's, one of the things they have in Hawaii is these teeny tiny ants. And if you leave anything on the counter, the ants come swarming to taste it and, carry it back to the nest. And it's really difficult not to just take the sponge and, wipe the counter. And I will confess, I have done it at times. But, a more skillful way is to take a knife or, and pound on the counter. They don't like that sound. It makes a really loud, unpleasant sound, and they run away. Or the best thing is to make a solution of peppermint, not too strong, but strong enough to smell, and then spray it around the counter because they don't like the peppermint. But at the times when I've just sort of lost patience, and maybe I didn't have peppermint, and maybe they weren't running fast enough or enough of them when I pounded on the counter, and I have taken that sponge and swiped. It's a horrible feeling, because we know that even ants, there are people who have recorded their vocalizations, their calls to each other, their distress calls. Uh, you know, they are living beings who their lives are dear to them. The same is true for each one of us, even more so. And the Buddha goes on to say, one is not called noble who harms living beings. By not harming living beings, one is called noble. So then I think about the marches yesterday. My sister and my granddaughter who went and marched. I was in a gathering with Mingyur Rinpoche, which I will tell you about later. Um, anyway, they went and marched for the right to choose what to do with their own bodies, with this fear that Roe versus Wade might be reversed, and for some of you, that may be good news. But I really feel if life begins at conception and we need to honor all life, okay, then there needs to be a way to determine, who is the father of that being, and laws to hold them responsible and accountable. Why should it just be the woman who gets pregnant? And then there should be complete support for the moms who, were basically forced to give birth at a time that didn't feel right for their family or their life. There should be total support for that child, free this and free that, and daycare and education and childcare and all kinds of support. If you want. Anyway, I just feel this is not noble. It harms living beings, and whatever your beliefs may be, pro-life, pro-choice, there are things that need to be put in place to support each position and make sure that people are not harmed by the decisions of others, especially. We can't prevent harming ourselves with our own decisions sometimes. We've all made bad choices and probably will do so in the future, but I think you understand what I'm saying. And then he goes on to say, radiate boundless love toward the whole world, above, below, across, north, south, east, west, northeast, southeast, south, northwest, southwest, above, below, all unhindered, all without ill will, all without enmity. That's our challenge. And it doesn't mean radiating boundless love is actually easy because it's pretty abstract. I just want to make clear, it doesn't mean having to love the people who may have abused or harmed you most in this life. That's really pointing to not having the heart be burdened with grudges and resentment and ill will and revenge fantasies. At least being able to just let go of all that. And the Buddha stood up for equality and justice in his lifetime. Over and over and over again, he did this. And we can do this too. We can be a community of kindness, of radical kindness, supporting each other to see through our inevitable delusions, right? Sincerely greeting each other as sisters and brothers and relatives and everybody in between, with loving awareness and profound respect. And this is how we change the world. I saw a movie, it's maybe the second movie that I've gone to in person in these years. And there were only two other people in the theater because I went like at a daytime with a friend. I wanted to see this movie. It was called Petite Maman. I just wanted to see a movie in French, and it means little mommy in French, Petite Maman, little mommy. And it was so moving. I have never in all my life, all these years, seen a movie that was just about a little girl and her mother and her grandmother, but completely focused on her and her little girl life. in the the moments that the film was covering, and it is a beautiful expression or evocation of childhood, the timelessness of childhood, and the how would I put it, like the relativity of space and time through the imagination. And of course, children have such access to playing with their imaginations. And so it's a kind of beautiful meditation on both the timeless realm of childhood and also the time travel that's possible with the imagination. And I'm not going to tell you more because it's mysterious, beautiful and moving and mysterious, and very contemplative pace, but so respectful of childhood. And when I'm talking about greeting each other and treating each other with profound respect, I'm just remembering the movie evoked for me the many, many years that I worked with children, besides, of course, the many years that I was a child, but the many years that I worked with children, and just how much respect I have for them. We hear parents say, those are big feelings to a child. Yes, they are big feelings. And to the child, their whatever it might be, their greed, their hate, their jealousy, their big, difficult feelings are just as big and difficult for them as ours are for us. And just respecting that they are beings complete unto themselves. I don't know if I'm being clear about this, but any of you who work with children, I think you'll know a little bit what I'm talking about, including with young people. So I do recommend that movie, which I don't usually do. Petite Maman, Little Mommy. But what I was talking about earlier, moving from these indriyas, these 5 faculties that turn into the 5 powers when we direct them toward awakening, these faculties that we all have in our everyday life, but then, channeling them toward awakening, that this is part of how we change the world. It is that changing our direction and intention for our life. The more you do this, the more you understand this, the more it becomes woven into your life, the more you are able to share with other people. And this is urgently needed right now. These teachings are always urgently needed, and they probably always have been at every moment in history, but I feel it more acutely now. So just coming back to, what's next? Well, I think just coming back to the basic understanding of the practice. And that when you do it, it's actually quite simple, even if it's not easy to remember to do it. That mindfulness brings us into the present moment. And why is that so liberating, right? Because it helps us recognize what isn't here, as well as what's here, like I was saying in the guided meditation. And I've talked to you all about my surprise when I discovered that that the refugees that I went to teach in that dangerous country in Chad, that they appreciated mindfulness teachings, even though they were malnourished, even though they were stuck in this open prison camp and still are, even though all those things were true. And you might think, where is mindfulness on the hierarchy of needs? They really liked it more than I think anything else we were teaching them, which was, I was helping in the preschool programs. And I think they really like it because it helped them recognize and realize what was not there. What was not there was the Janjaweed at that point. The attackers, the rebels were not there at that point. They were safe in that moment, even though, of course, they could pour over the border at any moment. They didn't. And recognizing what's not here, I don't know what's not here. So many things. There's not a dog or a cat here, which I might like to have here. But there's also not a lot right now of, hate in my heart or your heart in this moment. Do you know what I mean? That recognizing the qualities and appreciating what's not here. What Thich Nhat Hanh calls the non-toothache, right? As well as what's here. Each one of us. Just sitting here, being here, lying back, however you are, very simply just here together in this timeless moment. And maybe you can remember what it felt like to be a child. Do you remember how long summer was? Do you remember how long you had to wait for your birthday? Do you remember how long you had to wait for things you wanted sometimes? How long everything, the school bell to ring. Oh my gosh, eternity, right? Um, so, yeah, we create occasions like this, a sitting group. Maybe you have a little altar at home. We create little rituals like lighting a candle or lighting a stick of incense or putting a flower there or a photograph of a loved one who's passed away or a Buddha who inspires you. Any kind of, it could be a social justice Buddha, it could be a goddess of compassion Buddha, just whatever inspiring images direct our attention to loving awareness and to the teachings and to the community of beings who stretch way behind us, who did this before and they did it and we can do it too. And we do it for the sake of all the beings for whom we will be the ancestors who come after us as well. And we do this simply by recognizing, okay, the disturbances that are not here right now, and recognizing what is skillful that's here. Our presence with each other, maybe infusing it with a little love or goodwill, having a little compassion, some joy. I don't know what it's like where you are, but it's a beautiful day here. There's a slightly chilly breeze. The sun is warm. It's a beautiful day. Directing our attention to that which is skillful, which is here. And we do this out of a kind of caring, appamada, care, compassion for ourselves, because the mind is it just naturally picks up the ambiance, the environment, the signs of wherever it is. So imagine how you feel, for example, when you walk into a shopping mall. I mean, if you go there, or just go to the market, how you feel in that context, how you feel when you're walking in nature, what signs the consciousness is picking up out in nature. Or maybe when you open your Zoom and you see your sitting group there, our minds are brilliant at adjusting their expectations and reactions to what's here. Like my mind when I enter a restaurant, what it's like, versus my mind when, I'm getting ready to go to bed. It's up to us to, as much as we can, provide good signs for the mind to pick up what's skillful, metta, goodwill, loving kindness, karuna, self-compassion and compassion, joy for the goodness in ourselves and each other, and the fun that happens that we get to have from time to time in our relationships and on our own. And the equanimity, the spaciousness that we can sometimes find resting with things just as they are and feeling peaceful with that. We need to recognize those moments and make a big deal out of them. Really savor them. Really notice them and appreciate them fully, because the more we do that, that strengthens them. It's like giving a child attention for something good that they do. That sort of approval builds their confidence. We're building our confidence in the lion's roar of the Dharma, the basic teaching of the Buddha, which is that this is workable. This life is workable. Our minds and hearts can be trained. This was a revelation to me in my training as a therapist, as a psychologist. And how is the mind trained, and how is it shaped by just what we're talking about? Having some care about where we put ourselves, and um, and cultivating all the related qualities of mindfulness, like the five faculties. And there's endless lists, and we've covered lots of them, and we'll cover lots more because it's enjoyable, I think, to begin to discern more and more ways that we can pick up what is skillful and good and useful and inspiring, and make a life out of that, a life of the mind and heart out of that. And we nurture these qualities because they become a doorway, they become a gateway that helps us open to a whole different way of being, where we're not so focused on the content of our experience, the objects that are appearing in our consciousness, but we're learning how to shift back into, as they get steadier, as these qualities get steadier, they invite us to shift back to awareness itself, to just the knowing quality, and then infusing that with a little bit of tenderness and compassion. So yesterday I was at this small gathering of teachers with a Tibetan Buddhist teacher named Mingyur Rinpoche, who wrote a wonderful book about his basically escape into a 4-year retreat. What it was like for him to leave a life where he always had an attendant, and he just left. He left everything. He left his cell phone. Imagine leaving your phone. He left everything and just walked away from everything. And Ava, can you look up his book? I can't remember what it's called. It's something about the end of the world, I think, or something about, it's Mingyur, Mingyur, Mingyur. It's his most recent book, if you can put it in the chat. So this was a meeting with him, and he was using there was some chance to have dialogue and ask questions. It was really interesting because mostly he actually answered my question, but he didn't usually answer the question. But he would always give an interesting answer, even if it wasn't to the question being asked. And the analogy that he was using over and over again, he was using the sky and a lake, and how if the lake is this unbounded mind, the mind of openness, of emptiness, of freedom, if the lake is sometimes called Dharmakaya, this clear lake, then the reflections in the lake are very clear too. But usually there's a cloud cover, and that cloud cover is our deluded thoughts and misguided identifications. And so then the clouds cover the sun and the lake isn't clear. It's more like, a latte or chai or something. But the lake itself is actually still clear and always clear. It's the reflections that get murky or unclear. Or you can use the metaphor of the mind, like a sky, the sky-like mind. And the sky, like right now, when I look out the window past the houses and stuff next to me, I can see the sky is open and blue. There's no clouds that I can see out this window anyway. There's no clouds. It's completely clear. It's just the space of sky. And that is another metaphor or analogy for our consciousness when there's nothing bothering it. And even when the clouds come, if, maybe storm clouds and turbulence, or maybe just clouds of distraction and not being present and thinking about this and that and the other thing, drifting around, with our thoughts. Okay, those clouds they are not permanent. They have no intrinsic being of their own. They're clouds. They dissipate. They're like mist. They're only there because of certain causes and conditions having to do with moisture in the atmosphere and so forth. They don't have any substance, just like our thoughts. And yet they can um, occlude our clarity of mind. Um, In Love with the World, that's the book. In Love with the World, A Monk's Journey Through the Bardos of Living and Dying. Yeah, that's the one. But so we're nurturing these qualities that help us have access to the open sky or help us be that clear lake, whatever beautiful metaphor that we're using, but really realizing the emptiness, essential emptiness of greed, of hatred, of ignorance, of delusion. No matter what we're experiencing, this simple practice of being present and emphasizing the skillful, the goodness, is both within us and possible with our relationships with each other. And this is the end of greed, of hatred, of ignorance. It's respect, like I was talking about respect for children. It's respect for each other. It's listening, even when we don't like what we're hearing. It's listening to learn and have some openness of mind and heart. And I think that's what's being asked of all of us right now, so that we can begin to deepen our own insight and understanding and act toward creating a more just and safe and peaceful world. So, thank you, everybody. This is what um, I want to share with you this morning. Thank you. And now we have some time, plenty of time, for some reflections and responses. If you have a reflection or anything that you are curious about from your own practice, you can use the raise hand function down at the bottom of your screen. I was laughing yesterday because Sharon said she didn't know how to use it. And then I was thinking of all the things I don't know how to use. I just shifted from Mail in Apple to Gmail, and it's like everything's in a different place, and I don't know how to do this or that. I couldn't even reply to an email at first. It's very confusing. So if that's the case, you can just wave your hand wildly so Ava can see you. We're not too many here. It's a pretty small group today, so she will find you.
I am actually recording, so I only can see like 6 tiny squares at the time.
Oh, okay, okay. Then I'll keep my eye out. I'll help you, Ava, because you're always helping me.
So
I
there
see.
is someone
Yes.
in the chat.
Okay, I question the chat. Then I'll answer the chat first, then Robert, then Liz. So in the chat, the reflection is, it really doesn't feel like the end of greed. The world seems to be getting worse and worse. Yeah, it does seem like that, doesn't it? But how about your inner world? Is it getting worse and worse? And this is where we have to be skillful in what we're picking up. If last night I picked up my phone to turn it off, and I saw that flash about the killings in Buffalo, and I said, "Oh my God!" And I started to read it to Jack, and he said, "Is this what you want to be reading right before you go to sleep?" And so, there is that choice. It grabbed my attention. My daughter was born in Buffalo. My first husband was from Buffalo. Do you know what I mean? I just was like caught. But we have to choose what we're picking up. And yes, I understand what you're saying about the world right now. It kind of does look like that, doesn't it? But what about our inner world and the trust and confidence and faith that by transforming our inner world, we're doing our part in transforming the outer world? And that doesn't mean we just sit and meditate and don't take any action at all. It means that the actions we take are coming from a wiser place. And that's what we can do. So, yeah, Robert.
Hey, Trudy. Um, the movie you actually, you want to just turn that off? The movie you mentioned reminded me of one of my favorite films, this French film from the 50s called Forbidden Games, which is about, again, about childhood and about a young girl whose parents are killed in the bombings of World War II, and the childhood of they're discovering all about kind of death. It's such a gorgeous, beautiful film about loss of innocence, and so it also made me think of, I went for a walk today with a friend who was talking about buffalo as well, and I have been finding myself doing less and less reading of the paper. I get two papers every day, but I do less and less reading of it. And this friend, has some African American children, and she's a mom, and is reading it and said, and I said that, I said, I just don't do that. I don't kind of go into it. And she was saying, I think you have to. And so it is that is so confusing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
um, how, I don't want to stay in ignorance, but I don't know, hearing about brutality, I don't know what that does for me. So I'm, I'm juggling that a lot these days.
Yeah, and it's a delicate balance. It really is. I've tried to limit myself to a half hour a day because I don't want to turn away from racism, and I don't want to turn away from uh, the things that are happening that call us to action of one kind or another, whatever we choose to do in our lives. But I also don't want my mind to become suffused with all of that brutality, as you say. So yeah, it's really important, I think, especially with our devices. It's really important. Don't get those notifications that pull you away, just yeah. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Robert. Nice to see you again. Liz, you are next.
Hi, Trudy.
Hi.
You've had a really deep couple of weeks, profound couple of weeks you've had, and I'm feeling the benefits of them, so thank you. I'm in the mindfulness meditation teacher training program, I've told you before, and I'm starting to teach in 2.5 weeks, and I'm absolutely terrified. But I've noticed, and a friend and I who are in the same program, that there is no mention of gratitude in the Buddhist teachings. And I find that so odd, extremely odd. I avoided practicing gratitude from until, I'm 83 years old, until about 2 years ago, because I thought it was too woo-woo. I wouldn't do it. And all of a sudden, about 80, I decided I would try it. And it's been really quite wonderful. And I don't have the right words to describe this, but the neurobiology of the body, that gratitude releases so much tension in my body that I'm holding. And I'm wondering, and I've talked to several teachers about this, and nobody can come up with instances of the using gratitude. I mean, it's there, of course, through all the teachings, but I'm quite surprised it's not a specifically mentioned gratitude.
Well, it's true that it's not specifically mentioned much in the teachings. It's absolutely true, Liz. Gratitude, katanya is the Pali word, and it's really more understood as in the classical texts as sort of knowing what came before. In other words, gratitude towards one's parents, for example.
Mhm.
That's talked about. But the way that I feel it very, very present in the teachings and the practice is more through mudita, which is called appreciative joy.
Mhm.
And it's odd because when I don't know if it's still like this, but when I was, doing retreats and studying as a student,
Mhm.
nobody really talked about mudita for yourself. It was always having sympathetic joy for the happiness of others.
Mhm.
But I also know that this practice is to have, it is for sympathetic joy, not sympathetic, appreciative joy for the good qualities of your own heart
Yes.
and for your own practice and for your own, whatever good fortune arises, whatever blessings arise from the practice. And so I think it's more semantic, that actually the appreciative joy, I mean, the most classical teachers, Upandita, used to say, contemplate your sila, contemplate your goodness, contemplate your ethical, um, freedom from harming and so forth, the good things you're doing. Uh, the Buddha was very big on manners or etiquette or, uh, uh, good manners, good etiquette, appreciation. And I think gratitude comes in there with the practices of sila and of mudita, of appreciative joy. So I don't know if that's helpful, but that's how I look at it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just that I was, yes, when I worked at UC Berkeley, I used the name Mudita for my email because I wanted that coursing through the university system. I was Mudita at berkeley.edu, which I had forgotten was kind of hilarious for about 10 years. But I just want to say that I've started, not every night because I can't stand doing anything regularly, but most nights, a lot of nights before I go to bed, while I'm sitting on my bed, I do a gratitude practice. And it's really for whatever goodness I've experienced during the day. And it has made an enormous, it feels like an enormous gift.
It's wonderful.
So
Wonderful. Thank you.
just want to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And Sherry put in the chat, just a reminder that InsightLA has an anti-racism group that meets on Friday nights. And I love what you said, Sherry, that you find it uncomfortable and helpful. Because I think, whenever we encounter our biases, the prejudices that, the signs that the mind has picked up from the culture and from the environment of our upbringing that are inevitable and not skillful, it's uncomfortable. But it's the uncomfortableness that leads to more comfortableness. It's the uncomfortableness that leads to insight and understanding and more compassion. So I just want to thank you for the reminder, Sherry, of the InsightLA anti-racism group. Okay, so I'm looking to see any more waving hands. And yeah, you can always put your question in the chat if you don't feel like talking. Or your reflection. I mean, it's just, yeah, whatever is on your mind. And if there's nothing, I'll tell you what my question was yesterday for Mingyur Rinpoche. He, at one point when he was talking to somebody else, he said something about grandma and grandpa practice. And he said, that's one of my favorite kinds of practice. And then he was just going on what he was saying to that person. And I thought, oh, well, I'm a grandma. I wonder what his view of grandma practice is. In Zen, it's having a very magnanimous, accepting mind. You've seen it all. You're a grandparent. You don't get bent out of shape. Wait, hold on. I'm going to answer Liz. She's asking, what Pali word for gratitude? Katan. I think it's it could be katanu, and one of the ends has, I don't know, it's somewhere along those lines. You can find it. Yeah, so I was curious, and so I asked. Oh, and the format that we had at the meeting that Jack had set, which was, I thought, a really good idea, is you couldn't just be like the kind of supplicants asking, the big Rinpoche questions. You had to say what you understood about the thing you were asking about, and then ask. So I said, I understand being a grandmother because I'm a grandmother and I've been a grandmother for 20 years now. And I have learned about time and the relativity of space and time, especially from being a grandmother. I've learned I am all ages at once. I've learned that this is true for the grandchildren as well. I've learned, so I was just talking about things I had learned from being a grandparent. And I said, and I'm curious, why do you talk about liking that kind of practice? And what is that to you? And it was a lovely answer. He talked about how he had, I guess his father told him this story about a woman who she's a grandmother, and she wanted to know, how to understand the nature of mind. This was a desperate question for her toward the end of her life. And she had not been, practicing all her whole life, except it may be in a very devotional way, saying a mantra or prayers or, lighting incense for ancestors, very beautiful devotional practices. But now she wanted to understand, what is consciousness? What is the nature of my mind? And so he gave her some simple steps of practice, like, set aside some time. This is all going to sound familiar to you. Set aside some time to practice. Set your intention. Why are you doing this practice? What for? And then watch your mind and notice the thoughts that are coming, and notice how they are like clouds in the sky. And that the sky of awareness is not bothered by the clouds at all. They come and go. But just watch the thoughts, watch the mind, just do that. And then, at the end of your practice period, you just, dedicate, which means offering the blessings of your practice to all beings, which we always do here. And he said, so it's very cold in Tibet. So she wouldn't even get out of bed. She would stay in bed and wrapped in all her, whatever, yak skins and blankets and things. And that's what she would do. She would just watch her mind, set her intention, watch her mind, dedicate the merit. And she just kept doing this. And then I guess some later time, his father was visiting that, Tulku Urgyen was visiting that community and saw her and said she had become one of the most realized, awakened, enlightened beings he had ever met. So that was his answer. And I liked that answer because it wasn't just having a more tolerant or accepting or loving grandparent view. I don't know what kind of grandparents you had. I only had one. And I remember she was sweet and loving and let us snuggle with her all the time. But she also did things like, I loved to suck my thumb, this thumb. And so when we would go for walks, she would hold my hand so I couldn't get my thumb. And it would have been perfect to walk with my grandmother and suck my thumb. Do you know what I mean? That would have been really happy making. But instead, anyway, whatever grandparent you had, you understand what he's talking about. And they're usually a mix, just like all of us, right? But I think the message was, it's not too late. It's not too late to do intensive practice. It's not too late to learn to be mindful and to watch your own mind and understand, to shift the identification from the content of experience to the process of how the mind works and what comes and goes from our hearts, all of this. So let's see if there's any other question. Adam. So Adam's saying, I have a major decision to make quickly. Oh, and Adam works with children, so he's understanding what I'm talking about. I know you do, Adam. And what I have found really helpful is to not dwell and deliberate, but to focus on gratitude for what is. That's interesting. Adam, do you mind unmuting and saying a little more about how that helps you in your decision-making process? It sounds great, but I wonder how it exactly works for you.
I I
I
think that I identify with thinking, and I feel like I can figure it all out. And so um, the decision making process will overshadow everything else if I let it.
Okay.
And you know, when you last saw me, it was at Ram Dass's, and I want to, you know, let you and the Sangha know that a couple of days ago I took my first steps without crutches, and after, you know, 5 months of recovering from a shattered heel, and that was a point that I came back to, that I realized, wait, I'm trying to figure all of these details out, you know, about taking on this job or not, or moving or what, but what's really going on here, what's really important. And so it just lent me the perspective, oh my gosh, you know, this miracle of being on 2 feet again is really needs to come to the fore. And everything else, the deliberation, the stress, the worry about making that decision, take it on in little tiny bites.
Nice, nice. So when you talk about the decision-making process, you're really talking about all the thinking and imagining and that's connected to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Great. Thank you. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Thank you, Adam. So I think we have time for one more person or one more reflection if you want. Or we can just sit together for a few minutes instead of only 1 minute before we end. So we got one vote for just sitting. Let's just sit. I mean, we didn't get any vote against it, so let's sit together. And as the Buddha said, all tremble at violence. Life is dear to all. Put yourself in the place of another. One is not called noble who harms living beings. By not harming living beings, one is called noble. And then he called on us to go further, to cultivate love and understanding. Radiate boundless love towards the entire world, above, below, and across. Unhindered, unhindered, without ill will, without enmity. So in that spirit, we offer the goodness of our practice to all beings everywhere without exception. May we and all beings cultivate love and understanding. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for your presence. Thank you for being here. Stay for a breakout group. And also let Ava know, if you have teachers who come, who are teaching this group with me that you particularly enjoy, let her know, because I have no way of knowing. Sometimes I listen to the teaching from the week before, but I can't always do it. And besides, what I like may not be what you're looking for. I'm just interested if you can let Ava know. I'm going to sign off, so you can let her know in the chat. I won't see it. It'll be anonymous, what you think. But anyway, I'm just happy to see you all. I wish you a good week, a good day. May your minds and hearts pick up that which is skillful and uplifting, and I will see you next week. So thank you all.
Thank you, Trudy.
Thank you.